Am I the jerk for cheating on my wife? My name is Michael. I'm 34, and I've been married to Jessica for 10 years. We met back when we were students, and all this time I believed she was the one person I wanted to spend my life with. But for the past few months, I've been doing something that completely contradicts that belief. I'm cheating on Jessica. It didn't start as something planned. I never thought I'd become one of those people who risk their marriage for an affair. But one day, a new employee, Emily, joined our department at work. She was bright, smart, and incredibly confident. From the start, we got along well, and honestly, I felt something around her that I hadn't felt with Jessica in a long time. At first, I didn't take our conversations seriously. We joked, chatted about work and life, and sometimes stayed at the office a bit longer than the others. Jessica noticed I was coming home late, but I always had excuses. An important project, the boss kept me late. She trusted me because I had never given her a reason to doubt me. One day, I suggested to Emily to have a dinner after work. It seemed innocent, colleagues having dinner together, nothing more. But that dinner was the first step. We talked for hours, and I realized how strongly I was drawn to her. That night, I didn't do anything else, but on the way home, I felt like something in my life had shifted. Jessica was waiting for me, as usual, with dinner ready. She asked how my day was, and I felt like I was betraying her even with my thoughts. But instead of stopping, I started looking for reasons to spend more time with Emily. The following weeks turned into a vicious cycle. In the morning, I woke up next to Jessica. In the evening, I stayed late at work with Emily. I justified it by telling myself nothing physical was happening between us. But emotionally, I was already cheating. One evening after another dinner together, things got out of hand. Emily invited me over for coffee. I knew exactly how it would end, and yet I went. We sat on her couch, with wine glasses in hand. Emily was talking about how hard it had been to move to a new city and adjust to her job. I was listening, but part of my mind felt detached. I knew I was standing on the edge of something I could never take back. When she leaned in, I didn't pull away. It felt so natural, as if we had known each other forever. The kiss was brief, but it shattered every remaining boundary. That night I stayed with Emily. The next morning I returned home early, before Jessica woke up. My heart was racing as I unlocked the door. Scenarios ran through my mind. What to say if she asked? But Jessica didn't even notice my absence. She assumed I had slept on the couch because I'd been working late. It was a relief and a blow at the same time. I started questioning how we had gotten to this point, where she didn't even notice I wasn't beside her. Maybe if she had said something, I would have stopped. But instead, I met Emily again. We agreed to keep things simple, no feelings, just moments together. But I knew I was growing attached. Emily was the complete opposite of Jessica. She listened to me, shared her dreams, and didn't just talk about bills and weekend plans. Week by week, my double life became harder to manage. I caught myself avoiding conversations with Jessica because I didn't want to lie. She still looked at me with love, and it was tearing me apart inside. I tried to make up for my guilt, buying her flowers, making her breakfast, planning little surprises. She was happy but oblivious. Everything changed one day when I saw Jessica with someone at a cafe. I was walking by on my lunch break and spotted her laughing and touching another man's hand. My throat tightened, and I felt jealous. How could she? Yes, I was cheating too, but seeing her with someone else, it was like a punch to the gut. I didn't approach her or say anything, but I tortured myself all evening. When Jessica came home, I asked her how her day was. She smiled and said she had met up with a friend. For the first time, I began to wonder, what if she's hiding something from me too? For the next few days, I couldn't get that scene at the cafe out of my head. What if Jessica really was cheating on me? The thought made me feel both relieved and devastated. Relieved because it somehow justified my actions, and devastated because I didn't want to believe it. I started paying attention to small details. She spent more time on her phone and went out in the evenings for meetups with friends. I tried to find evidence, but came up empty. One night, I even checked her phone while she was asleep, but there was nothing suspicious. Emily noticed that I had become more tense. She asked if everything was all right, but I just brushed it off. I couldn't tell her about my suspicions. It would seem absurd, considering I was at the center of this chaos myself. One evening on my way home from work, I noticed a car parked near our house. Inside was the same man from the cafe. He was clearly waiting for someone, and it was no coincidence. I decided to wait and see what would happen. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Jessica walked out of the house. She got into the car without even noticing me. I followed them. They drove to a quiet part of the city and stopped at a small restaurant. I parked nearby and went inside to confirm if it was really a date. And it was. Candles on the table, dimmed lighting, a bottle of wine. I couldn't hold back. I approached their table and asked, "Jessica, what the hell is going on?" She turned pale but quickly composed herself. The man looked completely shocked. I found out later he was her coworker. "It's not what you think, Michael," she said, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. On the way home, we didn't say a word. When we finally walked into the house, she said, "I think we need to talk." I sat across from her, expecting excuses, but instead she looked at me and said, "You're cheating on me too, aren't you?" Those words knocked the ground out from under me. "What?" That was all I could manage to say, my heart pounding as if I just run a marathon. "Don't pretend, Michael," she said with a cold certainty. "You come home late with endless excuses. I found a receipt for a dinner at a restaurant we never went to together. Your shirts don't smell like you alone. Let's be honest with each other for once in the past few months." I froze. My mind raced to find an explanation, but her gaze told me she already knew the truth. And so I decided to give up. "Yes, Jessica, I'm cheating," I admitted. It felt like a shot into the void. Her face didn't flinch. "But aren't you doing the same?" She sighed and lowered her eyes. "We're not quite on the same side, Michael. You're cheating because you're unhappy. I'm seeing Jason because I feel lonely. You've stopped noticing me, and I tried pretending it was fine. But I'm tired." Those words cut deeper than any confession. I wanted to argue, but I didn't know what to say. Her words felt too true. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I finally asked. "Tell you what?" She looked up. "That I don't feel loved? That you ignore me? Would you have listened? Or were you too busy with your new— what's her name? Emily?" Now it was my turn to stay silent. "Maybe we should end this," she said after a pause. "You want a divorce?" The words came out louder than I intended. "I want honesty," she replied. "Maybe we can still fix this, or at least figure out what to do next. But for that, we have to be honest with each other." Her words made me think. Could we really go back to how things used to be? Or was this the point of no return? We sat across from each other in the kitchen, the air so thick it felt like it could be cut with a knife. Honesty? For the first time in months, I realized how long it had been since Jessica and I had spoken openly. We lived like roommates sharing a house, not a life. "I don't know where to start," I finally said. "Start with the truth," she replied firmly. I told her everything. About Emily, how it began, how it went too far. I didn't hold back any details, knowing that half-truths would only make things worse. As I spoke, Jessica remained silent, occasionally nodding, but her gaze conveyed more than words ever could. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Thank you for being honest," she finally said. "But that doesn't take away the pain." Her words cut deep, but I knew she was right. "Your turn," I said. She told me about Jason. He was indeed her colleague, but not just a friend. She started seeing him because she felt I had lost interest in her long ago. He listened, paid attention to her. "It was wrong," she said. But at that moment, I felt so lonely I didn't know what else to do. We sat there late into the night, discussing our situation. I began to understand that our infidelity wasn't the cause but the result of us losing something essential along the way. "What now?" I finally asked. "I don't know," she replied. "But maybe we should try talking to someone who can help us. A family therapist, for example." The idea sounded strange, but I knew she was right. If we wanted to save what was left of our marriage, we had to act. "Do you think we have a chance?" I asked. "I'm not sure," she answered honestly. "But if we don't try, nothing will change for sure." We started going to a family therapist. The first sessions were excruciating. The therapist asked questions that brought shame, forcing us to open wounds we had both tried to hide. We talked about what irritated us about each other, about years of accumulated grievances. It was hard. At times I thought it was pointless. Jessica often cried, and I felt increasingly guilty. But to my surprise, the sessions began to bear fruit. We learned a lot about each other, things we hadn't noticed before. I realized I often took Jessica for granted. She admitted that she had shut herself off from me because she was afraid of appearing weak. Emily was no longer part of my life. I honestly told her I was trying to save my marriage. She was disappointed but accepted it. As far as I understood, Jessica's relationship with Jason also came to an end. Was it easy? No. We both made many mistakes, and some of them couldn't be undone. But we started learning how to rebuild our relationship. I listened to her more and made an effort to focus on what mattered to her. She, in turn, began to express her feelings instead of keeping them inside. After a few months of therapy, I noticed we were getting closer. We laughed at old jokes and started planning weekends together. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were connected not just by our past, but by our future too. One evening over dinner, she asked me, "Do you think we'll ever be able to trust each other the way we used to?" I looked into her eyes and said, "I don't know, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen." Now I understand that we haven't fully emerged from this difficult situation yet, but we're moving forward, and I hope we have a chance. What do you think? Can trust be rebuilt after betrayal? Is it worth giving a second chance, or is it better to part ways? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe